presentation's entitled A Pilot Approach to Designating Quiet Areas, Limerick, and the presentation deals with environmental noise, and in particular the importance of having access to tranquil and restorative spaces in the public realm for our health and well-being. This is important where we live in noisy urban environments. I'll be talking about a pilot project which I'd like to get the public involved with, helping to assess two particular tranquil areas at People's Park and part of the Three Bridges Walk, potentially for national designation to highlight their benefit for respite from city life. So just the structure of the presentation, I'll give an introduction to noise and its impact on health in Europe, and why environmental noise is an important consideration in our everyday life. Give an introduction to the designation of quiet areas in Ireland and what we can do to protect tranquil and restorative public spaces. Talk about why traditional methods for the assessment and designation of quiet areas doesn't necessarily work, and talk about a potential new approach which includes citizens in the decision-making process using Soundwalks. Go a bit into about what Soundwalks are and a particular framework for collecting data called Hush City. Talk about some proposed Soundwalks in Limerick, and again, wanting to get as many people interested or groups interested in to collect as much data as possible, and then I'll conclude. So I'll start with this slide, and I showed this image one because it's a very nice image. There's a quote in there: "Sound, like air, surrounds us and affects us all every day, no matter where we are." So sound is immersive. And when we use the word sound, it's generally used in a neutral manner. It's the sounds that we don't want to hear that we call noise. So noise is unwanted sound. So we might hear a beautiful sound of birds singing, but you might say that the noise from traffic is unpleasant. Noise that comes from roads, railways, aircraft and industry we call environmental noise, and while its effect on us is largely subjective, it does impact our life. So long-term exposure to excessive environmental noise, loud environmental noise, can be bad for our health. There's the direct injury to our hearing, such as hearing loss or tinnitus, but it can also lead to psychological and physiological distress. And we measure the burden of disease in the number of healthy life years lost compared to the ideal situation where the entire population lives free of disease and disability. The technical term is disability adjusted life years, or DALYs. And the World Health Organization in 2011 estimated that in Western Europe, as a result of environmental noise, that in each year, the number of healthy life years lost are just over 900,000 years for sleep disturbance, around 650,000 years for annoyance, 45,000 years for cognitive impairment for children. So it can have a negative effect on a child's ability to learn. Over 20,000 years for tinnitus, and just over 60,000 DALYs are lost for coronary heart disease. So there's a link to serious health issues, and that can be caused subconsciously without us even realizing. In relation to traffic-related environmental noise, at least 1 million healthy life years are lost every year in Western Europe. Also, the European Environment Agency in 2020 reported on the number of people in Europe suffering from various health conditions due to exposure to environmental road noise in urban areas. In 2017, around 12.5 million people suffered from sleep disturbance, and over 3 million people suffered from high sleep disturbance. Almost 30,000 people suffered from coronary heart disease, and there are around 7,500 premature deaths. So there's very serious links between noise, environmental noise, and its effect on public health. Research shows that it's important that where we are exposed to excessively high noise levels, that we have easy access to respite from them. And when we think about somewhere that's tranquil, it's important that they are publicly accessible places. And these need to be places where man-made noise is at a low level, but where natural sounds such as birdsong can be relatively high. And studies have shown that there's a link between natural environments and the level of relaxation, stress reduction, and even longevity and pain relief. But the world's population is becoming increasingly urban. There are more trucks, cars, motorcycles on the roads than ever, resulting in higher levels of noise pollution. So if you live in a busy city, finding tranquility in your daily life can be a challenge. So the Environmental Noise Directive was transposed into the Environmental Noise Regulations, first in 2006, but the latest version of the regulations is in 2018. And within it, councils, that's action planning authorities, can designate quiet areas and agglomerations and in the open country. So an agglomeration is an urban area with a population of 100,000 people or more. And for the first time under the 2018 regulations, Limerick is classed as an agglomeration. And so we can designate quiet areas in the city, importantly also in the county. And in the environmental noise guidance for local authorities, we're recommended to delimit quiet areas in our agglomerations and county. And what designation as a quiet area does is it highlights the benefit of that location to citizens' health and well-being and identifies areas that should be protected from environmental noise. In Ireland, Dublin is the only city up to now that's designated any quiet areas for protection. They've designated 8 quiet areas, that was in 2013, mainly parks, that have been designated based on noise modelling, analysis of land use, and assessment of noise levels. And that assessment has been carried out at the core or the centre of these locations, where noise doesn't exceed a certain level. And I'm not going to get into the numbers, but this criteria is based on a quantitative assessment based on numbers. So there are long-term noise exposure levels that shouldn't be exceeded. However, natural sounds such as the wind blowing in the trees or beside a river or beside the sea, they're not necessarily quiet. Natural sounds can be quite loud. So designation based on the quality of the sound and its context is possibly as appropriate as noise levels, if not more, and should be taken into consideration. The European Environment Agency also say that in searching for quiet areas, we're not searching for silence, but places for relaxation. Consequently, we need to find and designate calm and tranquil areas in the city. And ideally, we're looking for places that are within walking distance, close to our homes and work. In Limerick, we have a wealth of potential tranquil areas for relaxation and socialising that are embedded in the urban fabric in the city and the environs. From the People's Park to its laneways, its pocket parks and along the River Shannon. And it'd be good to start looking at potential designation of these areas. So back in 2017, we, Limerick City and County Council, began monitoring the long-term sound levels in People's Park with a view to looking for designation as a quiet area. And you'll see our noise monitor just to the right of the Thomas Rice Memorial. You'll see there's a column there and the solar panel powering the noise monitor. But the long-term measurements are above the traditional criteria, at least those used by Dublin, even though this would be a setting in which natural sounds and the sound of people socialising would be dominant. And this has flagged to me that we need to take a different approach to the identification and assessment of potential quiet areas for Limerick, one which takes into account the citizens' perception of sound as well. So this new approach I'm thinking of is both a quantitative, looking at the noise levels, and a qualitative, subjective, taking account of the public's perception of sounds in tranquil spaces by undertaking sound walks or listening walks and collecting data from that. So a combination of a quantitative and a qualitative approach. So in relation to looking at the noise levels across the city, we have new noise maps this year for all roads and rail and large industry in Limerick. These are maps that we've never had for Limerick before, and they include the predicted environmental noise levels in the city. So we can review our areas of the public realm and green space and identify where we have areas of relative tranquility or relatively low noise levels. We can take the areas of potential tranquility forward then for review for designation of quiet areas. And once we know where our publicly accessible areas of potential tranquility are, it would be good to back this up with the public's perception of these areas. And a way we can do this is by the council hosting Soundwalks. So these are listening walks, which the public record their experience of the acoustic environment. My hope then is that by using the quantitative data, potential tranquil areas identified from the noise mapping, and the supporting data from the Soundwalks by citizens, that an application can be made to the Department of Environment for national designation of quiet areas. And this assessment method can also be used to focus our priorities for our programme of works in the public realm. For example, we could look at disadvantaged areas and give them a high priority or a ranking. So it is simplest, again, for example, if the council has money for benches, that we can prioritise where they go in areas that provide respite. On the counter side of that, we can also see where noise levels in our public realm are high and identify measures to reduce excessive noise in the city. So we can try and identify measures or design measures to improve the acoustics of our public spaces. So this is the first of two areas that I'd like to look at, the People's Park. And I've outlined the park in blue in the aerial view there. And in that image, you can see the expected noise levels from the noise mapping draped over the land. Red being the highest noise levels and yellow being the lowest noise levels. So this is it's called a heat map. And I've also outlined a 400-meter buffer in red outside of the People's Park, which might equate to approximately a 5 minutes walk. And within that buffer, there would be a high number of households and workplaces that are expected to be exposed to high levels of road noise. And so the park will be a benefit to the health and well-being of residents in this area. Now, I haven't worked through the statistics to show the benefit in terms of the noise level reduction yet, but that's something I'm working on at present. So it's in the People's Park here that I'd like to support this piece of statistical work that I'm going to do, and I'd like to host a sound walk in the People's Park. And that's being with the public and getting citizens involved. The second area to review is the western part of the Three Bridges walk, O'Callaghan Strand and Clancy Strand, and I've highlighted them in blue again, with the noise mapping draped over the land again. I just show the Three Bridges walk. Sorry there for the shaky hand for the line showing that. But obviously this is a very popular walk for people in Limerick. And again, I've added a 400-meter buffer around the two strands. There's a significant benefit in terms of environmental noise reduction for people living and working close by to the western side of this walk. So, but you can see on the northern side, the noise levels, on the eastern side, sorry, the noise levels are a lot higher, so there's not so much of a benefit on the eastern side. So that's why I'm looking on the western side. And on that western side, there's lovely natural sound of the Curraghow Falls, the Park Canal Weir, and the flow of the Shannon River. And again, I'd like to lead Soundwalks to the public along that part of the Three Bridges walk. The statistics from the assessment of the noise levels near these potentially quiet spaces can then be reviewed alongside the data collected from the Soundwalks. So I'm just going to discuss what the Soundwalks are about. So Soundwalks, they're a way to collect data from citizens to get their perception of the acoustic environment. So as I mentioned, Soundwalks are participatory listening walks through the outdoor environment, and they're led by a moderator. And I'm proposing to use a particular framework for the collection of data, which uses an international standard for Soundwalks, and that framework is called Hush City. People's experiences are primarily recorded through questionnaire-based rating scales with stops at predefined spots. And questions cover all auditory sensations as well as other contextual variables, such as what they see, their personal expectations, the maintenance and security they feel in that area. And then those perceptual responses can be analysed afterwards. So Hush City was developed by a Dr. Antonella Radici, and it was to help with the collection of data. To help with that collection of data, Antonella developed a mobile app called the Hush City app. So when you're at a place you want to assess, you can use the mobile app to record the sound, estimate the noise level, take a picture, fill out the questionnaire, and then share that data so other people can review the data, or even if they're visiting a place, they can find tranquil places, or they can find places that are on the map in there. Now, I had run some Soundwalks last summer, and I'd used the app, but there's been an issue actually this over the last few weeks with downloading it, both in Google Play for Androids and with the Apple Store for iPhones. So for the purposes of this Soundwalk, I'm proposing to lead over the next couple of weeks. Participants will be given a paper copy of the questionnaire to fill out, and actually that might suit some people better anyway. So in the questionnaire, there are 20 questions, and it takes approximately 3 minutes to fill out from start to finish. And the questions are designed to explore the correlation between the soundscape and topics such as emotional responses, the perceived quietness, positive and negative sounds, the appropriateness of the sounds, landscape quality, and accessibility to the location. It's also asking questions about security, maintenance, cleanliness, quality of the location, which are also important in any potential designation and useful in terms of other benefits or potential improvements for our tranquil spaces. So over March, I want to organise Soundwalks for groups in the People's Park and the western part of the Three Bridges Walk. And ideally for each of these Soundwalks, I'd like to get to 10 to 15 people to participate. This is the People's Park Soundwalk. So we'll meet at the Tate Clock, Baker Place, which is at the top of Glentworth Street. And I'll hand out the questionnaires and give a bit of an overview. Again, it can be a bit alien, but the walks are done in silence, and we try to focus on the positive sounds we hear as we walk around. In a sense, the Soundwalks can be quite therapeutic in themselves, and we'll stop at the stopping points to fill out the questionnaire. This is the Three Bridges Soundwalk. We'll meet in front of the King John's Castle for this one, ending at St Michael's Boat Club. We don't walk particularly fast, and so it might take us approximately 40 minutes perhaps to do this one from start to finish. Once the questionnaires are filled out and we get to the end, then we'll have a discussion at the end to share our experience and talk about the positive, negative sounds, and talk through what our perceptions have been. So I do have scheduled dates for the Soundwalks, and I think these have gone out by email, and they're on the PPN website and the council's website. And there's an email address and telephone number that you can express your interest. But what I'd really like is if you're involved in a group that might be interested, that I could potentially make contact with you and schedule a Soundwalk dedicated for your group, ideally in March, which is when I'm collecting the data. So just to conclude, the important takeaway points are: environmental noise is the second largest environmental cause of health problems in Europe after air pollution. It's important that we recognise the importance of our publicly accessible spaces and the benefit they provide for our health and well-being, particularly in a world that's becoming more and more urbanised. Designating quiet areas in our cities and rural areas highlights the benefit of tranquil and restorative spaces, but unfortunately, I don't think the traditional methods of assessment suit Limerick. And I believe that a new approach is needed using our new noise maps for Limerick to identify potential quiet, tranquil spaces, and to bring that information to the public and bring citizens into the decision-making process by taking them on Soundwalks to assess those spaces. Again, I'm looking at these pilot areas: People's Park, Clancy's Strand, or Callahan's Strand on the Three Bridges Walk, and I want to organise Soundwalks for groups to attend, and I'd love if I can get your support and get you to join them and any groups that you might be part of. So yeah, if you know any interested groups, it'd be great if I can make direct contact with you to arrange them. And another important aspect to this approach is one where we can identify spaces in the public realm that have the future potential to provide respite, and that we can work to improve the soundscape. And I'll say thank you there for listening, and I'll finish up there.